Alright, so the next thing we're going to talk about are graphing linear inequalities. So really what we're doing here, we are combining a couple things we've already done this year. Graphing inequalities, we graphed on a number line. We're going to take the inequalities, solve them for y like we have the equations, and put them on a coordinate plane. A lot of the same steps that we've already done. Then we're going to add a couple of things that are new. So first thing we'll talk about is the same old process. Same steps that we used when we solved a linear equation. You got to get y by itself. So solve for y, get everything away from it on the other side of the inequality sign. The coefficient before your x is still your slope. The constant, the number that's by itself, is still your y-intercept. So when we go to graph, you'll plot your y-intercept, you'll do your slope. Same steps as solving an inequality. Also, if you multiply or divide by a negative sign, or by a negative number, you still have to flip your inequality sign. So that stuff doesn't change at all. So this is the part that's a little different. It's pretty easy though. So if you remember when we graphed inequalities on a number line, depending on whether it was less than or less than equal to, change the dot. If it was less than, it was just a circle dot. If it was had an equal to sign on it, we filled it in. So kind of the same thing here. So if your sign is a less than or a greater than sign, we're going to have a dotted line, because what that means is that the ordered pairs that cross that line are not part of your answer. Right? But if it has an equal to sign, if it's less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, we're going to have a solid line, because the ordered pairs that cross on that line are part of your answer then. Right? So if the sign, another thing is we have to shade above or below the line. So if the sign is a less than or less than equal to, we're going to shade below the line. If it's a greater than or greater than equal to sign, we're going to shade above the line. To determine whether it's above or below, use the y-axis. So use your y-intercept. If your y-intercept is 2, numbers that are above 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's above the line. So that's if it's greater than, we want to shade above those bigger numbers. If the numbers are smaller than that 2, so you're 0, you're -1, if it's a less than sign, you want to shade that direction. Okay, so you kind of have to read your y-axis to whether shade above or below. Alright, so let's jump into a problem so we see what they look like. First thing that should jump out you here is it's a greater than sign, so that means we're going to have a dotted line, not a solid. Alright, so we need to solve for y. So to get y by itself, I'm going to subtract the x on both sides. So the x's will cancel. Y is greater than -x plus 2. So that means our slope will be -1/1. Our y-intercept would be 2. Right. So to graph it, we want to put a point on +2. Right. And then since our slope is -1/1, we're going to go down 1, right 1. All right, so remember, it's a dotted line since it's not equal to. Right. The sign was a greater than sign. So once again, let's look at our y-axis. So the point's on 2. We want numbers that are greater than 2. So we want to shade towards the 3, 4, 5, and 6. So above would be in this direction. Okay, we should look at our sign here. It has an equal to sign, so that means when we go to graph it, it will be a solid line. Same steps, move your 2x first, subtract it. So we have -y is greater than or equal to -2x plus 1. It's -y, so we got to divide everything by -1. When we do that, effectively we're just changing all of our signs. And since we divided by -1, we have to flip our inequality sign. Right? So here, our y-intercept will be -1. So we'll put our point on -1. Our slope was 2/1, so we'll go up 2, right 1. and this was an equal to. It's greater. It is less than or equal to, so we want a solid line. Since it's less than, we want to shade towards numbers that are smaller than 2 on the number line. So smaller than 2 below the number or below the line. Alright, go ahead and pause the video and do the first you try. So when you're doing this, you try. First thing you should have saw, it's greater than, so dotted line. Subtract 3x both sides. So you have 2y is greater than negative 3x plus 6. Divide everything by 2. We'll have y is greater than negative 3 over 2x. Leave it as a fraction. Plus 3. So when we go to graph it, we're going to point on 3 first. And then down 3, right 2 for our slope. Alright, it is a greater than sign, so that means we want a dotted line through these points. And since it's greater than, we want to shade above the line. Go ahead and do the final you try. Alright, so it is an equal to, so we're going to have a dotted or a solid line. Subtract 4x first. We have negative y less than or equal to negative 4x plus 8. Right, we divide everything by negative 1. So y, since we divided by negative 1, we have to flip our sign. Negative 4x divided by negative 1 is positive 4x. 8 divided by negative 1 is negative 8. So we go to graph this. We're going to have a point on negative 8 and go up 4, right 1. Negative 8 is actually off our graph a little bit. It's okay. When we go up 4, right 1, we'll be right here. Right, and this has an equal to, so it will be a solid line. And it was greater than, so when it's greater than, you want to shade above. Right, so key things to remember. Solve for y, get y by itself. If you multiply or divide by a negative, flip your sign. When you go to graph, if it is less than or greater than, you should have a dotted line. If it is less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, you should have a solid line. If it is less than or less than equal to, shade below. If it's greater than or greater than equal to, shade above.